It's Friday, my dudes.
Thank God it's Friday.
It's Friday, my dudes.
TGIF, everybody. Welcome to Iron Realm Media's Flat Earth Friday Fringecast. My name is Josh Corey. Let me turn my volume up a little bit there. Welcome to another fabulous Friday. We've got Walt, we've got John, we've got Adam, we've got Zach. We have a great guest today, one Mr. Chad Swan.
Let me turn my volume up a little bit there.
Stick around. We've got a great show coming up for you. Hold on, everybody. You know, I've been sitting here screwing around, and as soon as I go live, I just don't know what the hell to do. But welcome, everybody. My name is Josh Corey. Let's just say hi, everybody, real quick. Let me get John Savage out of the way. John, how has your week been?
Oh, hello, mate. Hello, everyone. Yeah, not a bad week. Having gremlins in my broadband stuff. Had Vodafone round all day today. He actually said, it looks like you're being capped somewhere. And that's exactly what I thought as well. But yeah, I'm getting wicked feedback, so I'll shut up.
Well, I don't know what the hell's going on. Seems like everybody's got issues tonight, at least everybody here with us. Let's see, who else? We have, well, Adam Meekin. I know I see his icon. We're going to cross our fingers and hope that he is with us. If not, he just gave up and decided to go continue enjoying his vacation. Adam, did you take a little time out for us this evening? All right, great. Well, thanks a lot, Adam. How about Mr. Walter Johnson?
Wine and margaritas or whatever you do in Italy, that's where he's at. We saw him throwing down at the whatever event that was. That was awesome. The band with the interesting covers. Wow, suddenly I have echo. Whoa. Okay, I'm back. Hello. Hey.
I think.
But yes, we had a great show this morning over there on TFR, and man, this is going to be a great one over here on IRM. Hello, everybody in chat. I started out trying to say hey to individual people, and once this begins talking, wow, I think I'm in a loop.
I think somebody might be wearing headphones. Could that be Adam? Adam, are you with us?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Well, yeah, now that the echo begins again, we know you're here.
I've got my headphones on. I've abandoned the computer. I'm on the phone, guys. I don't know what gremlins were suffering tonight, but
it's weird.
Yeah, I'm here now. Good evening, everyone. That's been hilarious. 2 reboots and there's still no joy.
Weird. Well, so far, so good, at least on my end. Well, hopefully that'll hold true anyway. Let's see. We have one Mr. Zachary Zabala. Zach, so you set out on your grand adventure this morning. Tell me, how has the first day of traveling been for you?
Well, I can't complain, man. It's been a beautiful day. We were supposed to have a huge storm come rolling in, and it just decided to stop raining right before it got to me and Hank, which was wonderful. The first campsite I was going to stop at is having a festival this weekend with no pets allowed. And normally it's just for this weekend. So I had to go a little bit further than I wanted, but I got set up before the show started and everything. It's awesome. I did more gravel roads than I did highway.
That's the way to do it. I mean, as long as you're not trying to drive a clean car. But I will say that it's really nice to be able to have one festival for all the assholes to come and gather at. No pets allowed. Go F yourself.
Yeah, and then I couldn't believe that. Just for this weekend, Thursday through Sunday. I was like, well, whatever.
So
tomorrow's free. Yeah, tomorrow.
Sorry, we'll just keep doing this all night long. You got to learn to roll with the punches. Because no matter the best laid plans, no matter what you do, something's always going to get thrown in the mix. So it's a good way to stay on your toes. adapt, improvise, and overcome.
It reminds me of my favorite John Lennon quote. Life is what happens when you're busy making other plans.
That's right. Well, we do have a great big guest this evening. Again, it's a little bit more synchronicities going on here because last week our guest was Crow 777. And last week on Crow 777 show, he gave a call out to some quote unquote high level Freemason to have on his show. And then lo and behold, this week on his show, he had some high level Freemason. And guess what? Lo and behold, on our show, look who we have. One Mr. Chad Swanson from the Chad Swans channel. Chad, thank you so much for joining us on YouTube. We've had you over on our TFR show, but it's really great to have you on our Flat Earth Friday Frenchcast. So welcome. Oh, Chad's just a little bashful. No, that's probably a joke. I suspect it might have been Chad who was giving us a little bit of feedback. Is that you there, Chad?
There you go, Josh. Mike was off.
Perfect.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate being here. Welcome, gentlemen.
Well, it is our absolute pleasure to have you.
Welcome aboard.
It's a pleasure to have you and a pleasure to have somebody to take the blame for the sound.
Yeah, see, apparently I just got kicked off OBS, but the reconnection was successful. So if we left, we should be back now.
Wow, it is just rampant today. This is beyond the pale.
You know, professionals don't talk about their little gremlins.
That's right. That's right. We just plod on without bringing attention to all these horrible things that everybody's going, what the hell are we listening to?
Right. How come we can't hear anybody? Well, it's them ignoring their issues. Sorry. Let's get back to Chad. We have more important things to talk about.
Right. Is he actually being able to talk to us at this point? Is anyone talking to us?
I'm here.
Awesome. Finally. My goodness, man. It's been such a struggle. Oh, wait. No, it's been a wonderful show. Welcome. We're glad to have you back over here on the IRM media side of things. This is home. So relax. You don't have to worry about so many, we're not going to have any hard breaks or anything. Now, when we need a break, everybody just raise their hand and let us know, and we'll definitely throw a song on real quick so everybody can grab coffee or whatever. But we're sorry we got such a late start here. We're definitely underway. We have a lot of great people out there in chat. I don't know if you can see it in the way you're viewing us, but everybody out there is excited. And I mean, you know, the classic, oh no, now we have the secret Freemason information here. Dude, you've been giving up so much information over on your channel. I've just lost track. I can't even keep up anymore. And I hear you're getting a little possible flack from some of that as well, sir. So kind of fill us in on what's been going on.
Just, you know, since December when I really started posting content on my channel, you know, it's just gotten amazing response. I think there's a little bit of some shadow going on recently because besides talking about Freemasonry, you know, I'll get into some other political stuff. And it seemed like once I started doing that, things, you know, YouTube doesn't want to recommend me to too many people anymore. But I guess that's a badge of honor. But in the process, you know, I've just gotten some really, you know, interesting results from Masons, from non-Masons. You know, you can always have your critics out there when you talk about subject matter like being a Freemason. But, you know, really my intention with my channel is to just shine the light on these various topics, you know, when it's good and when it's bad. And so, you know, there's things that I'm extremely critical about Freemasonry. At the same time, there's a lot of lies and myths out there, and I try and dispel those to at least just, you know, create an honest conversation.
And you definitely have a great amount of content. As you say, it doesn't just focus on hidden stuff. You have a great variety of information there. I know when you were on our show, we were kind of trying to dig into some of the things that, as you say, are myths or legends in the what's the secrets of the Masons, or, you know, how much flat earth knowledge is there that you've been able to ascertain and you're digging through this. Because as you did say on the show, they don't just hand this stuff to you on a silver platter all the time.
That's absolutely correct. It's funny, I'll get some positive response from Flat Earth Masons, and they're out there because they weigh in on my channel. the thing that you don't see on my channel in the comment section is really the conversations that I have via email and even over the phone with people that I feel, having a conversation with would be beneficial. And, that's really what motivates me to keep putting out the content and keep talking about it. I want at least Masons to feel like they're making an informed decision as it results to like their participation in the lodge. And for those that don't know my story just a little bit, I was introduced to Masonry about 10 years ago. I've got some clients that are Masons, and I held the belief years and years ago that Freemasonry is Luciferian and Masons are intentionally misled, and it's not until you get into the 16th or 17th degree and then you find out Lucifer's the bearer of the light, the source of light in Masonry, and you're let in on the secret. And so when I got to know these men that were really, really fine gentlemen who happened to be Freemasons, at one point they needed some help down at the local lodge, and they asked if I could help, and I jumped on it because I'd never been in a lodge. And the opportunity to get in there and go, okay, what's going on behind these closed doors? I mean, the curiosity got the best of me. And in the process, I got to know a bunch of these gentlemen. They seem to be, really, outstanding men in the community. And, out of curiosity, definitely, I joined the lodge and, went through from being an entered apprentice to fellow craft, a master mason. And once you're a master mason, you can petition the other appendant bodies, which would be like the Scottish Rite and the York Rite. So I went in the York Rite and went through all the degrees up to the Sir Knight, which is the Knights Templar within the York Rite. And then I went all the way through up to the 32nd degree in the Scottish Rite, and became an elected officer in the Blue Lodge, was serving in the lodge. And then about end of 2015, thanks to people like Rob Skiba in the books that he's written that I've read, there was some information in there as it relates to subject matter that connects in with Masonry. And it was kind of this eureka moment of just going, hold on a minute, what's all this about? Because in the process, a lot of the lies and the idea of Satan and Lucifer and, all that stuff is ridiculous. And so it doesn't exist there, but there is something within Masonry that is very secretive, and you have to do your due diligence. You have to dig for the truth. And most Masons are so oblivious to it, the real deep esoteric meaning and origins of the craft. That's where I've drawn this line in the sand, and I've said, you know what, I'm not going to participate in rituals or degrees that have connections back to something that stands against my faith. And about then, 2015 kind of started this journey, and here at the end of last year is when I finally decided to start weighing in on some of this content, and here we are now.
Indeed.
Can I just jump in on that introduction bit? Can you hear me, guys?
Yes.
Yeah. It was something you just sprung my mind. It would be about 10 years ago. I was approached by a gentleman. I was just working in the shop one day. I'm a pharmacist, Chad, so I was doing whatever I do, poisoning people, however you want to perceive it. But we'd built a bit of a reputation for actually genuinely caring about people. And I remember a guy coming up to me in the shop and just saying, have you ever heard of the Masons? Would you be interested? And it was kind of well into the common law knowledge I was building and the likes there, and some of the activism I was doing. And my initial response was, oh, no thanks, mate. I'm not getting my nipples out and rolling me leg up. Do you know what I mean? And I've never, ever, from that comment, ever been contacted again. I don't know, my first point is this something you're invited into or something you can actively seek?
So one of the things a few of the things that I've come to realize, the differences in Masonry, not just in the US, but in Europe and even down into like South America. So there's big differences in the way Masons might solicit and actively recruit. Technically, in the way it works here in Texas, is you are not supposed to solicit anybody for membership. They have to ask it. It's a very crucial part in Masonry that it's of your own free will that you made the request to become a Mason. And it's such an important part of really the process of going through the degrees, is it was something that you sought out. In fact, in some other states, and it was decades ago, they would deny you if you asked, and you would have to ask up to like 3 times before they would finally allow you to fill out a petition. So, but things have started to kind of change recently, where the membership in Masonry is so low, it's at the lowest levels it's ever been, that they're doing a little bit more to promote themselves and really try and get that membership up. So, it doesn't surprise me for people to really kind of solicit, or, hey, what do you think about the Masons? Invite somebody to one of the stated meetings, which we put on a meal, and just try and, get somebody into the lodge that way.
Now, what about DMLA, Freemasonry for Children? How are they initiated?
That's not anything I would have ever been a part of, from the leadership standpoint, or even as a child going through any of that. So, they're really grooming these boys to become Masons. That's clear. But as far as actually what they do in the degree work, I'm not sure.
Don't I remember hearing something about Disney tied into the DMLA somehow? Wasn't he part of that?
Absolutely.
Interesting tie to a man who's got
I was just asking, Chad, because I was asked to join, and not anybody that I know in my family was a Freemason. Definitely nobody in my immediate family. So that's why I was just wondering, like, if people could request you to be one at that young of an age, but like you said, you weren't in it. That's the only reason I had asked.
Yeah, for the DMLAs, now they will actively seek you out. It's a little different. At least within the Blue Lodge, the rule is really that you do not solicit. You're really not out there specifically saying, hey, you should become a Mason. But what you can do is say, hey, have you ever looked into Masonry? You find a ways to get around it. So that doesn't surprise me.
Well, I was interested in it at a young age, just in the whole, idea of conspiracies, and then didn't really have access to much information. 80s, mid 80s kind of thing. Libraries really didn't have a whole lot where I lived anyway, pre-internet. So I was really shocked years after my father died to find out the connection to Shriners and Freemasonry. I had no clue. All I knew about him and his Shriners was he had a funny hat that had Alibaba on it, some kind of cartoon word. I didn't understand why he had that weird hat. And we would go to lots of parades with funny cars and little guys doing wheelies on cool little carts. And that's really all I knew. And lots of hospital functions for kids that were burn victims. I remember that a lot as a kid. But that connection I had no clue of at that age.
That kind of answers my, well, I don't answer. Will I ever get asked again? Is my question, really, Chad. It's from listening to you guys on TFR and some of your shows that are out there.
You would not be in a blackballed position right now if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, I'm not scared of indulging. I don't think it would corrupt me in any way, but certainly the depth of knowledge that it would expose me to is the intriguing. At the intriguing point, I'd say it's not necessarily to attain anything, but just more other than knowledge. Hence the purpose of the questions. It is something that's intrigued me more since we've gone down this rabbit hole of flat Earth and the likes, and the relevance in terms of where the Masons sit in the structure of all this. That's the big interest for me, maybe to pursue a little further. So I'm glad to hear I wouldn't be blackballed, not necessarily.
I think that there would be some disappointment coming from probably, where you are right now, your mindset and just your overall knowledge of the world around you without even being a Mason. One of the things that is wanted most by the newest Masons is more Masonic knowledge. And it's really not there within the lodge. It's the Mason doing his own due diligence and his own study. I have a massive library of Masonic work, scholars and historians, encyclopedias, and it's through that research and study that you get the big picture. You don't get it in the Blue Lodge. And now the way they do the Scottish Rite and the York Rite, when you go into those organizations, they'll have a festival or a reunion, depending on if it's York or if it's Scottish Rite, and they confer all the degrees over a 2-day period. And it's a lot of information. It's a lot to take in. And that's how somebody can go literally from being a Master Mason to a 32nd degree Mason in a weekend. And it's not that way in Europe specifically. In other countries, I know they don't do it that fast. It's just in the southern jurisdiction here in the U.S., it is done that way. And you miss a lot of stuff. You really do. When we received our 32nd degree, they gave me a copy of Morals and Dogma, a copy of A Bridge to Light, and that was basically it. In the Blue Lodge, once you go through the 3 degrees and you learn what they're about, there really isn't a continuing education to it. So it is one of the most repeated requests from Masons is to have that more knowledge. They want that esoteric knowledge. It's just that it really isn't there. So for me, I mean, if somebody really wanted to get into the occult, occult knowledge and really get into the esoteric understanding, the mystery schools, the Rosicrucians have a far, Masonry is a watered down version of the Rosicrucians. And I'm a member. I joined the Rosicrucians via online recently because it gives me access to their library. And every month they send out a packet that has lessons and they have exercises for you to go through. And it's far more what I think Masons are looking for if they're going into Masonry for that esoteric knowledge and lessons and development. It's just really, it doesn't exist in a Masonic Blue Lodge today.
I often have a dumbed down question there. So there would appear to be the ability, it's incumbent on the person to research themselves, which is always nice to hear in any sphere of learning. But with that in mind then, are there a lot of people out there that are holding probably more levels of Masonic knowledge that they know about? And for me, the reason I'm not expecting to search for knowledge, but maybe more be given a perspective of how to view the knowledge that's already accessible to me. That would be the assumption I would make in terms of what I wouldn't be expecting to be handed a load of books, but maybe to be able to read books from a different mindset.
If you want a list of books to read, I can send you one that would really answer probably a lot of those questions that come from Masonic authors. I had somebody on my channel today who's a Mason say that thought that the claims that I make is ridiculous, that I said that there used to only be 2 degrees, and in their mind there's only 3 degrees, and it shows the ignorance of this Mason that has no concept of the establishment of the United Grand Lodge of England in 1717. There was only 2 degrees, and before that there used to just be 1 degree. And through up until today, you have really within Masonry, the highest degree is the 3rd degree. That is what is generally accepted. That the 3rd degree, the Master Mason's degree, is the highest degree. Everything else is in addition to. And so you have up to 32 in the Scottish Rite. You have an additional 9 on the York Rite, and then there's also other different degrees that can be put on you for various other appendant bodies or roles of leadership that you might participate in. And then beyond that, you have some things like, if people that are familiar with like Bill Schnoebelen, and he talks about going through the 96 degrees, or I think with him maybe it was 90, but it goes up to 96. And that's really the Egyptian Masonic Rite of Memphis. And some of those organizations are what's considered irregular to regular Masons, so they don't, they might not count that as a Masonic body. It starts to just get into a lot of gray areas, but there's a lot of degrees and they convey a lot of information. But all of this is really available to the public if they just know where to look for it.
Was it Adam last week that we talked about the old degrees of like 360 degrees in the ancient? Was that who it was? I'm sorry, I may be mixing up.
It was, that was I'd like to take the credit for that. That was Crow that was saying.
That was Crow. That's right. It was Crow. Okay, my bad.
We're talking levels.
We've had too many great guests lately.
Yeah.
Those are African degrees, and Caucasians are not permitted.
Really interesting.
So whenever you see if you see black Masons that claim that they've gone through the 360, I'll get them on my channel. Well, they don't really like what I have to say all too much, and think that I don't have any idea what I'm talking about because they've gone through the 360 degrees. But those are the African degrees, and I couldn't participate in those even if I wanted to.
That's an interesting point. The racial divide, for want of it's something I've heard mentioned before, that you will never see a black Mason or whatever Mason it is. It's a separate form, which is interesting, coupled with what Crow said last week, that you're intimating that there are the 360 degrees of Masonry if it's included in African Masonry. So could you elaborate on that? Because I have no idea. It's just you've rung a bell from last week and previous stuff that, I said there is a distinction in terms of colour, creed, whatever you want. Could you maybe put some meat on those bones?
So the Moors, they will claim that Masonry comes from the Moors, and so it's coming from the culture, from black culture, and that's it. And I would argue that I think that they are correct in a sense. I think it goes back further than the Moors, but the black god of Masonry. In the Cook manuscript, one of the earliest documents of Freemasonry gives Nimrod as the founder and father of Freemasonry. And Nimrod was not a Caucasian person. So I would say that, yes, that they hold that, and through those Masonic orders, they do confer 360 degrees. In Masonry, as it's been established from 1717 in the United Grand Lodge of England, like I said, there was only the 2 degrees, and then they had basically split the first degree into 2. And so the entered apprentice and the fellow craft became separate degrees, but they really originated from the first, and there was always the 3rd degree. So you always had the death and burial and resurrection of the Grand Master Hiram Biff in the 3rd degree. And then from there, in the 19th century, there were degrees all over the place. I mean, it was a mess in a sense, because that's when Albert Pike really came in and reorganized and cleaned up and gave us the 33 degrees, well, really the 32, and then the 33rd being the honorary degree that we have now. And, out of that, we have the York Rite and the York Masons, which takes us into the Knights Templar degrees. And really it's this separation of Christianity through the Dark Ages and the Crusades versus Judaism and the building of King Solomon's Temple. And that's kind of the 2 sides of current Masonry now. And then there are some organizations like the United, the United Grand College of Rites, which is here in the U.S., and they go up to 96 degrees, and that's where it stops.
You mentioned colour, and I forgot his name, the builder of Tower of Babylon, wasn't white. and then you mentioned Solomon. And that's some of the reading I've been doing recently and listening to a little bit of. I almost feel like you're listening in on some of the conversations that Brother Sanchez has presented, and some of the strange, want a better word, reverse racism you hear on those sites. But there seems a strong an issue with the creed of certain biblical characters. Is that something that's defined for yourselves when you reach these degrees? The like Noah being sheep hair and eyes of light and white skin with Noah. You know, are these sort of part of the revelations that you get, or is it relevant? I mean, for me, as a programmed white man who's been told to not judge colour or accept colour and reject my own colour, it's something that you kind of put to one side. Like I say, I'm listening to Brother Sanchez a fair bit and some of the debates on there, and it seems quite an emotive subject as to the creed of these biblical characters. Is that something that's delivered information-wise to you, and is it relevant, or is it more relevant that we're all children of God?
It's far more relevant in the Black community. For us, as far as anything that I was taught and exposed to, that it's really not something. Now, there are some Noahitic degrees that I know a very select group of people will confer those degrees, and I've never seen that done. But even here in the U.S., we have, we have regular masonry and irregular masonry, and the irregular side of it seems to be far more the Black community, and you get a lot of the Illuminati symbolism. They really feel that they're part of the Illuminati within those Masonic orders. And then you have Prince Hall Masons, which are strictly all Black lodges. I had a chance to interview a 33rd degree Mason on my channel who lives down in South America now, that originally joined Masonry in Houston. And he was the only Caucasian in a lodge of 400 Black men. And it was an irregular lodge. And he has horrifying stories of the abuse that was put upon the candidates when they go through their degrees, which is absolutely not happening in any of the degrees that I have ever been a part of. There's no abuse whatsoever. But in those degrees, that was a central part of going through all of those appendant bodies as well. They would have paddles that had Masonic square and compasses on them. They were official stuff, and drew blood and beat the crap out of their candidates. And it really seems to be part of that culture. And that culture, at least in the response that I've gotten on my channel from Black Masons who feel that they have the monopoly on Masonry and that we've just stolen it from them. It seems to be that race is a important component to their ritual work. And to the point within the U.S., Black men were not able to join the lodge. I think it was up until about the 70s, because one of the things that you have to be is freeborn. And since slavery in this country, a slave could never be a Mason. And that's where Prince Hall Masonry really started to take hold in this country.
That feels like a political answer. I'll probably try and within Masonry then, is colour important, or is it taught to be not important? It sounds like some people say it is, some people say it isn't, but from your gut reaction within.
So I'll be as honest as I can with you about this, and I don't know how it relates to just where in the country I live right now. In that, here in North Texas, but we moved out from California in 2007, and I grew up in a very diverse, environment. And, I never heard the N word, growing up. It wasn't part of just, it just wasn't there. Out here, it's a different story. And I can tell you within the lodge, there are racist individuals that will freely throw that word around. And it's not just, it's not just for the men in the lodge. I mean, I hear it outside of the lodge as well. I think it's ridiculous, but and so I don't know if that's just something that's more to do with where I'm at in the country, or even within Masonry. But I've definitely been introduced to more racist over the last 10 years than I've ever, and it's racism towards one group towards one culture, the Black culture.
This is such a touchy subject, and it's hard to talk about these things because everything in this world has become such a trigger. I mean, even 20 years ago, heck, even 15 years ago, this would not have been such a difficult conversation. But political correctness and everybody having a trigger hair on, oh, my feelings have been hurt, you've got to make it better in some way, publicly apologize, all this bullshit. It's really gotten to the point where it's even hard to have a logical discussion about something that shouldn't be hard to talk about. I myself have done a lot of research in the last couple of years. Well, I say a lot, an amount that is definitely more than it ever had done before, on the ideas of outer lands. There's been maps, there's been historical legends, mythologies, whatever you want to call it, about people from other lands, outer rings, that were different in many ways, not just more intelligent or more advanced, but literally different colored people. And then if you tie that into the idea that has kind of been bandied around since David Weiss and I never can remember her name. I am so terrible with that. Anyway, the idea of a son being born at the North Pole and kind of cycling out and that becoming the realm that we've lived in. And then you hear of legends of lands that didn't have suns for whiles or didn't have a moon for a while. Even John right now is reading the Adam and Eve book. And in one part of that book that's been taken out of the Bible, when they see the sun in the sky for the first time, they flip the fuck out. They don't even understand what's going on. It blows their mind. So it's really interesting that Caucasians have way less melanin in their skin, and you just kind of tie all that together, and it might really have some weight to the idea that maybe we are a different not species, just a different race, completely different, from a different place, from a different time, a different sun. You know what I'm saying?
I'll take you, just to interject there, what that just reminds me of the Flat Earth Conference, and when Martin Kenny unveiled his model that he's developed from different. One of the probably more contentious things he raised was regards to that actually, and it's stuff I've done with some of the reading in Enoch, Adam and Eve, and the likes, is that actually there were all the other creeds other than the Caucasian creeds existing before the biblical understanding of Adam and Eve, and they were. Who were those people? That was the white race, that came in. That actually God had made people before then, and this was a separate mission with regards to the production there of I don't think Adam, as I've looked into it, stands for red, and I've never looked at my skin and thought that's white. It's pink at best.
Right,
it's lovely,
especially in the sun.
I'm on holiday. It's a lovely tan right now, and probably as I look at my arms now, it is more like a strong cup of tea, like a red earth. So I
see Bob's in my head. Bob's in my head in chat because I was just about to tie in the whole blood type thing that has now become an issue topic in the whole thing. So yeah, that definitely ties into it, Bob. Thanks.
Yeah, I absolutely subscribe to the concept of a pre-Adam man, and the Rh negative blood types really are a mystery as well. and how that really plays in to say the seed of the serpent versus the seed of the woman.
And when you find out that there's the whole oh my God, was it the French, the Da Vinci, not Da Vinci, Merovingians, yeah, that were keeping up with the bloodlines and all that stuff. Yeah.
Just to go one more sideways step there, you mentioned earlier the Moors, and that's to step outside of skin color and race, but more to step into religion. Is there a Islamic sect of Masonry that continues to this day that certainly I've never been made aware of? You kind of mentioned it with the Moors. It's the first made my ears prick up. Is there an Islamic? Certainly, I know there's Islamic sects which are more spiritual, such as the dervishes and the likes. But is there a formalized Masonic side to Islam? Or
absolutely. So the Mohammedan lodges. In fact, I had some video sent to me recently where the Black Masons here in this country were collaborating with Masons in Turkey and really trying to bring about. They had this conference that they're having and that they filmed and really trying to bring about, in a sense, the New World Order, this change in the world. And you'll see that because you kind of have that Islamic element within the Black community as well. It just is really going to be, it's going to really depend on just where in the country or where in the world Mason and where those lodges are, and what religion they're going to really ascribe to. Here, at least in Texas, the majority of the men in the lodge would consider themselves Christian.
And that kind of, go ahead, Adam, go ahead. I hear your question.
I was going to say, so that's lovely, and Christianity is a concept that I would probably ascribe to 500-600 years ago, from my understanding. But so I suppose the point still stands. Then is Islamic Masonry viewed differently? Is it held in the same? Or how is it viewed politically? Because it does seem a very closed group where we're elevating ourselves, whatever group, whether it be Black Masons, White Masons, whatever, that there's this badge of honor that is developed from it, or a hierarchical feeling of superiority over others, whether that's through knowledge or race. The way I would see it is, you're looking at, and you mentioned it's coming from, you start off with Solomon, but you're saying stuff started in the 1700s, and then we look at the Knights Templar. Now they're ascribed 500 years before that. So it would have seemed that the definition of Masonry, as you said, is in the early 1700s, which would seem quite a while after this continuation of what I would consider is King Solomon's knowledge, or a watered down version of what he was taught. Is that, and how does that sit in terms? See, to me, there's a bigger picture. If it's coming from King Solomon, then it's questionable what race creed he was.
So this is the part of the conversation that I definitely was wanting to get into. So you are 100% correct that it does not start in 1717. It goes back. So what is really the chronological order that takes us back to these mystery schools? And you hear that term thrown around quite a bit, of mystery. Well, can somebody even name a mystery school? Most of the time they probably can't. But really the story that Masons are given, at least in modern Masonry, is that Masonry was established in 1717, and we are speculative Masons, and that the speculative Masons were accepted into the operative guilds, the operative builder guilds, and which were operative Masons. And in the process, speculative masonry outgrew operative masonry, and it's what we have today. And so really they kind of just tie it back to about the builder guilds coming out of the Middle Ages. Well, you have to ask yourself, well, where, how is this coming through the builder guilds? How is it passed on to them? And how does this relate back to Solomon's temple? Well, Solomon asked Hiram, king of Tyre, for help in the building of the temple. Hiram, king of Tyre, employed Hiram Abiff. Now, these are all Phoenicians in the building of King Solomon's temple. And Hiram Abiff is mentioned in the Bible as completing the house of God, where in the drama of the third degree, Hiram is murdered and buried in a sense, resurrected, or put in a proper burial place. But the candidate is portraying this death, burial, and resurrection. It's really a baptism into masonry in the third degree. But the Phoenicians, if they had this, what was the mystery school that they were part of? Well, they were the Dionysian artificers, and they worshiped and honored Bacchus, the lamented one. And you can take the Phoenicians and where they got it from the Assyrians, who got it from the Babylonians, who really started getting this from the Chaldeans. And you can take this all the way back to Babylon and to Nimrod, and the many names that Nimrod went by across that region. And when Nimrod was brutally killed, the lamentations, and you'll read about the women who sat at the temple and wept for Tammuz. This lamentations is what connects a lot of these mystery schools and the initiations, and it's really at the heart of this death, burial, and resurrection. Osiris being resurrected into this godly, this deification. And it's through that initiation of, understanding the immortality of the soul, which is really what it's about. That's what connects these mystery schools. Well, the artificers, the Dionysian artificers, when they finished with King Solomon's temple, they really went into the Commacenes, the Roman Collegia, and spread out across Europe and into Asia, and brought with them these these initiations, the names, the symbolism, and you see it represented. A really fantastic book is by Alexander Hislop called The Two Babylons. And he goes through historian after historian, really documenting how this spread from really Babylon out into the world, and even into today. I mean, and it's perverted even Christianity. Christmas and Easter, and it all roads lead back to Babylon. And it's through that that influence comes all the way up from and influences the builder guilds of the Middle Ages, and then those building guilds are what then brings in the speculative Masons, the Rosicrucians, and the Kabbalists of the early 18th century. And lo and behold, we have Masonry like we have it today.
Chad, could I ask what whether you've been told? I mean, sorry, let me spit this out. Put my teeth back in. Enoch the Bad. I've heard about as being the father of Freemasonry. Can you tell us anything about that?
I would say yes, from the science, the passing on of the sciences, right? But we weren't, the human race wasn't building structures, until you get to Babylon and you get to Nimrod, who, was involved in the building of Nineveh and cities in Assyria, the building of the Tower of Babel. That is really when Masonry, as a trade, that's where it takes off. It's Nimrod who gives the first charges to, I believe it's 40,000 workmen, and sets them to go build cities. And that's really where the Masonry aspect of it, but that esoteric knowledge that's brought into those mystery schools, I agree, goes back past into the antediluvian age and 2, bad Enoch.
And yeah, and so I mean, Enoch went under numerous names: Hermes, Mercury. There's plenty more I can imagine. But Pythagoras, I've also heard, has been the father of Freemasons. I'm confused.
Well, you get, I mean, when the Hermetic orders are in, but really the earliest charges, which is the Cook manuscript, is very clear that Nimrod is the founder and father of Masonry. I mean, that's, have there been major influences to Masonry throughout history? Absolutely. But it still goes back beyond Greek and, Greece and in the Roman times. It's going to go further, and you end up back at Babylon. And the reason why they had the mystery schools, what they were worshiping, why they went secretive, and they, none of this stuff is discussed in Masonry, currently. But when you get into the early 18th century Masonic writers and scholars, they talk about the Dionysian artificers and the orgies and the drunken debauchery and really the use of psychoactive, what do they call them? Estrogens.
Yeah, sorry.
Entheogens.
Entheogens.
Yes. And what's interesting is in the 3rd degree, the drama of the death burial of Hiram Abiff, his grave is marked by the sprig of acacia. And if you look up what was being used to extract DMT, they were using the acacia for DMT as part of this awakening, this kind of the opening of your pineal gland, this awakening of your third eye, this all-seeing eye, in this alchemical process that is really what is the secret in Masonry, is the alchemical process that you're going through. Your soul is, in a sense, your spirit, and that is what was being used as to facilitate that. And we have that symbolism in the 3rd degree now by marking the grave of Hiram Abiff with the sprig of acacia.
And acacia is used today for exactly the same reason, although it's not sort of linked to Masonry. But is it surprising to you that they don't teach the lineage of Nimrod? I mean, as far as I'm aware, obviously I didn't know the guy, he wasn't the nicest guy around, and if anything, he was sort of the anti-god. Would that have something to do with them not teaching that sort of heritage?
Yeah, I think that would be a defining moment for us. So-called Christian, comfortable participating, in recreating the death, burial, and resurrection of the Grandmaster, who's really, Nimrod. That I'm not participating in any of that, and that's when I drew the line in the sand, and that's when I stepped away from the lodge, when I came to that realization. But you're correct, he was a tyrant, and as a result, a feared and an antichrist. And so for those that have followed Rav Skiba's theory that kind of goes in line with Alexander Lawrence and Peter Goodgain, they believe that the final Antichrist is going to be one of the 7 who will be the 8th, who was the first king, and that somehow it's the spirit, the resurrection of Nimrod, that spirit, that first Antichrist, that's going to embody the final Antichrist. And so, and they give some scripture, they make a pretty good argument. I've read three of their books on, kind of pulling that together. And I figure if there's any chance that Nimrod, the first Antichrist, is going to embody the final Antichrist, like, I'll be damned if I'm going to go sit in that lodge and pretend like I don't know that.
And I'll just ask one more question, then I'll hand it over to the guys. Is there anything tying Freemasonry with the Jesuits? in their
Not at any-
origins, or
not at any level. I mean, there was speculation about there being the Jesuits influencing Masonry, but that was all kind of just a hoax. There's a lot of things that are written about Masons that demonize them in the 19th century with the rise of occultism, and you have occultists in Masonry, so that doesn't help the cause much either. And that's where you get Lucifer and all of the stuff that gets introduced into the public consciousness and really what they think of Masons as being Luciferian. But as far as the Jesuits, and I've looked into it, I really just hadn't come across any solid evidence showing that, that influence.
Fair
But
enough.
nothing would surprise me.
Fair enough. No, it like you say. I mean, you just don't know with history. I'm sure. We've Martin Leakey's in chat. I'm sure we'd all agree that none of us really know anything beyond the generations of people that are alive, for sure. So it's hard to know whether the Masons were co-opted at some point. I mean, I know there was a huge split, wasn't there, between the York and the Scottish, and that's the junction point that I see sort of things went astray. What's your sort of take on that time period when they split?
So the first 100 years after the United Grand Lodge was established in 1717, there's really three main lodges, so three divisions within Masonry. There are the Ancients, the Moderns, and the Yorks, and they heavily disagreed on. I mean, that is one of the most common things within Masonry is they don't agree. Scholars do not agree with one another. It's left in a big way to a lot of interpretation from their standpoint. And I did listen to the interview that Crow had with the Mason yesterday, and he even touches upon kind of this idea of it's from their perspective, and so when they step into Masonry, they're doing it from, say, a biased perspective, and how that's applied. And within Masonry, there's constantly been division in that sense, and it wasn't until in the early I want to say it was 1820s, when they kind of got on the same sheet of paper, at least in England. But within Masonry here in the U.S. and the York versus the Scottish, they're so drastically different in the allegory and the symbolism and the story that's being conveyed. And at the same time, you have Masons that are part of both organizations. So,
Can I just jump in there? You mentioned Martin. I just want to go sideways just for a second, guys. I will pull it back, but good friend of mine, Martin Leakey, he's lost his mum this week, and I just think if there's any minutes to send a prayer some love his way. Martin, love you guy, and keep strong. We've lost the most important thing. But there's people out there that care for you still, pal, and I just want to send Martin all the love I've got, and stay strong, brother.
Yeah, condolences, Martin.
Yeah,
Absolutely, Martin. I didn't meet you in person, but having you on the show was amazing, and definitely sorry to hear that, friend. So lots of love heading your way.
Yeah, it'll come in waves, man, and just take it one wave at a time. Don't let it build up to a tsunami. Just let it, when it hits you, let it hit you. It's best that way. Oh, it was for me at least.
Martin's a great exponent of alternative history, Chad, and that was just another little question I wanted to ask.
Exactly. Oh my
with
God,
regards
this
to
is
him.
amazing history information.
I mean, not just these guys looking into it. I've sent Martin, shout out Martin for the shout out he gave me. I went to the Star Fort eventually, and that was very, very interesting. That was showing two types of history. There was a double-headed eagle crested over this place, and then 100 years later, a single-headed eagle replaces it, but which is topped with a Jesuit symbol, which kind of demonstrates some of the rewriting of history a little bit to me, certainly within the architecture and what was going on in terms of the, how 500 years later you can see the way things were reconstructed a little bit. But with that, with regards to Masonic history, you know, we're all looking at it, whether you're a study of Velikovsky or with some of the other alternative history stuffs that we all look at. Do you subscribe to the 2,000 years since Christ, or are you given a more succinct, true to the biblical text that Jesus has put? You know, it's 1,000 years, and basically we've been at 1,000 or more added on to us. Are you given any inclinations as to the falsification of history?
Seems like every time I look at something, I find out that what I thought isn't the case, and that I've been lied to. It seems to be across all subjects, and history being one of those. I'm not is, I guess, when it comes to I want to err on the side of taking things literal, but at the same time, I know it's been corrupted. You know, I don't deny that man has corrupted the Bible that we have currently. But to your point of really, like, what do I specifically subscribe to right now? I'm going to still be in the camp of 2,000 years, but that's where I'm at right now.
Can't argue with that. I have lots of supposition, but it's very hard to step. It's a bit like the flat Earth. It's very hard to step outside of those timelines because they've been just like the ball. They've been ironed out, and supposed problems and what we are taught, the constructs we are taught, all fit to the model we want. Again, it's just looking at things. Sometimes they don't fit when you just look at them with fresh eyes.
I would agree with that.
Now, you had mentioned how the different lodges don't get along. Is there a head lodge, like one lodge on this plane that dictates what all other lodges do? And is there a head person in Freemasonry?
No. So each state is going to have their own Grand Lodge. That Grand Lodge dictates Grand Lodge law to all of the Blue Lodges in that state. Some states will be in communication with, say, Prince Hall lodges. Some states don't. In Texas, if you're a Prince Hall Mason, you would not be allowed to come sit in our lodge, and vice versa. We don't the Grand Lodge of Texas does not recognize them, but really that's where it ends as far as a governing body is. It ends at the Grand Lodge. Now, within the Scottish Rite, there's the Southern jurisdiction, and they're going to cover so many states. So you have a lot of Masons that are outside of the Southern jurisdiction that despise Albert Pike. Albert Pike's really responsible for the reorganization of just the Southern jurisdiction. And these are things that, when you first get into Masonry, you have no idea that this is how it is. It's kind of like somebody looking at Christianity from an outside perspective, that, all Christians are kind of one and the same. And you're like, no, there's so many different denominations and so much different dogma. I mean, you can't even get Baptists that agree, on the same thing. So within Masonry, it seems like that's absolutely the case. The way they have organized and really developed an early a brand new Mason up to a Master Mason is different from one state to the other, because there isn't just this one centralized governing Grand Lodge. And they really don't have any, the United Grand Lodge of England no longer has any jurisdiction over here either. So to your question, no, that each state is independent.
And Pike, speaking of Pike, was he not the founder of the Ku Klux Klan?
That, but good luck finding some direct proof of it, because if there is, I would totally have videos on it. I did have somebody who claimed to be a member of the Ku Klux Klan reach out to me and said that with what they were taught, Albert Pike was very instrumental in the Ku Klux Klan, and that he helped reorganize degrees in the Ku Klux Klan that mirror the Scottish Rite, and he named some of them. Yeah, outside of that, that's the best I've been able to do with his connection to the KKK. But it seems like, you know, a lot of, if you were to ask the KKK, they would say yes, he had, you know, he was a founder in a sense.
Yeah.
What I find really interesting is when I interviewed that 33rd degree Mason, who was the only Caucasian in the lodge, and I asked him, I said, you know, how did those Masons in the Scottish Rite that are irregular Masons in Houston, how did they view Albert Pike? And he said, to them, Albert Pike was a hero. You know, they idolized Albert Pike, you know, loved morals of Albert, a lot of his work, which really seems bizarre that on one hand, he's idolized by the Black Masons. On the other hand, he's founder of the Ku Klux Klan.
Yeah. I mean, is this the problem with Freemasonry today? I mean, you're saying that they're the lowest recruiting levels. I mean, is this part of the problem? Is that there's such a spaghetti history to it, and it just seems to have no definitive sort of route to be going down. I mean, there's so many different people saying so many different things. I mean, it's almost as diverse as flat Earth. Is this part of their problem at the moment?
That would be part of it, sure. I mean, that's definitely an issue. You know, that overall Masonry, the lodges are just closing because they can't bring in membership to sustain and keep a lodge afloat, and they'll go dark.
So on that note, how do they view what you're doing? I mean, do they see this, you know, on the outside? Are they sort of, "Oh, Chad, you know, you need to keep your gob shut, stop, you know, giving away any secrets or whatever, or be careful"? But on the other hand, they're sort of secretly thinking, "Well, this is good PR. You know, any PR is good PR." Has anyone sort of conveyed anything to you about what you're doing?
I've had people reach out to the lodge to get me in trouble, and
I'll bet.
The gentleman that oversees the website I'm close with, so it usually doesn't get past him. He did reach out to one of our district deputy, Grand Lodge district deputies, and the first time it happened, and that gentleman went onto my channel and looked at my content, and then I got a call at 8 o'clock in the morning, and when I saw his name pop up on my phone, I knew exactly what it was for. And we talked for about 30 minutes, and even though he didn't agree with a lot of the stuff I said, he didn't feel like I had violated, and I don't in my videos. So I say a lot of stuff that Masons would say I should shut my mouth about, but I don't reveal the things that I swore that I wasn't going to reveal. And really, it offers no value to the conversation if I told you what the secret password was, or the secret handshake, or how I stood with my feet. And all of that information is out there. It's in books. I mean, if somebody wants to know what that is, the obligation, you know, if you want to know exactly what I said in the obligation, you can read it in a book. I mean, almost verbatim. So it's not, to me, the secrets of Masonry aren't there anymore. It's the esoteric meaning of the symbolism in Masonry that are the secrets that you have to really dig for. I'm surprised I've been hauled in the channel, and I would look forward to being able to stand my ground and state my case. I used to be the junior warden, which you're technically the attorney of the lodge. So if somebody violates Grand Lodge law, you're the person who has to set them straight. So there is a process in place that at some point, you know, they definitely could haul my butt in there for that. But I've decided that I'm not going to be renewing my membership. I mean, my dues are paid right now through the year, but I'm not going to be giving my money to the organization anymore based on the position I hold and the opinion I have now.
Is there a way of walking away from the Masons? Is that feasible?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So it's not like the mob. All you got to do is just quit paying, and they'll take you off the ledgers.
If you quit paying, it's a little more difficult because they have to keep on showing that you haven't paid, and then you get disciplined, and it's really not the way to do it. I mean, I'm just going to formally resign my membership.
So it's just like
time
anything else. You got to give notice and all that good
That's the
stuff.
best way. That's the best way to do it. Yeah.
Makes sense. So it seems like Freemasonry certainly gets a bad rap in the conspiracy world. Seems like everybody's always got it out for Freemasons. Do you have you seen anything recently, sort of internationally speaking, or anything going on now that might sort of have any of these Freemason fingerprints that we should be on the lookout for?
I think that the whole concept of the Masonic boogeyman behind every corner is just ridiculous. You know, can you have corrupt people in high places that happen to be that are Masons, especially within, you know, say England and, you know, the hierarchy there? Absolutely 100%. But as this idea is, you know, within the truth community, you know, the Freemason, especially flat Earth, because you have all of the astronauts being Freemasons, and so the demonization of Freemason is just so strong. And usually the justification is false. It's been a lie. It's a hoax. It's something like that. And so the Masons have really gotten a bad rap in that sense. And even on the interview with Crow that I was listening to, I'm surprised the Mason didn't call Crow out a couple of times when Crow talks about, you know, the higher ups and, you know, the bankers and the Masonic connections there. And I would want to know, okay, give me some examples, because people have these blanket statements and without really backing them up. And I'm not saying that Crow's wrong. I'm just saying I would challenge him to say, you know, at least point this out so we could take that situation and look at it for what it is, instead of just lumping in Masons at the highest levels. And you always hear, you know, higher ups to high levels. Well, what level is that? You know, I mean, we keep on moving this goalpost within Masonry. I used to think it was, you know, the 17th degree you find out about Lucifer. And then, you know, they said, no, it's not until you get to the 32nd. And now it's the 33rd. And, you know, you can have 33rds that will say, no, there's nothing to do with Lucifer. And they go, well, you're not high enough yet. You haven't gone up to, and we just keep on moving this, you know, well, to the sinister people are at the very, very top, and we don't know their names. We don't know where they work. We don't know what they do, but they're there. We all know they're there. And that seems to be just this falsehood that I think is just a falsehood, until somebody gives an exact, like, hey, the you know, this leadership within the Royals, who are clearly Masons, and here it shows them at these things, who are also doing these horrific things over here. Okay, I will go right along with that and condemn them, but I don't think it's being done from a Masonic organizational standpoint.
I mean, is it a case that the Masons, I mean, clearly this place is being run by nasty bastards, and you know, you can put a label on them, you can put a group label on them. Do you feel this is a similar sort of thing to, say, some would say the Jews are the scapegoats, and you know, they put people in positions of power that are Jews or Freemasons, and essentially they're just puppets, hiding a sort of shadow organization in the background that all of us can probably see, but none of us know.
Could I add to that, John? Oh, sorry, Chad. I was just going to say, could I add to that? But you just taught me something tonight with regards to Albert Pike and any reverence that Black Masons hold him in. And I've always felt that it's not a matter of going up through the degrees, because there's too many good people in the Masons for this construct that Chad's involved in, for the nasty bastards to be within that. And it would just I just wonder whether there's a separate construct outside of you guys that do these things. That Albert Pike seemed a guy that would set the tone of what the nasty bastards, for want of a better word, are going to do. Whether that's even with gratitude from black people for setting up the Ku Klux Klan, which seems nonsensical. But you think about what he wrote in terms of how the world's going to be divided, controlled, and the populace manipulated. First World War, Second World War, and what appears today. Do you think there's somebody outside of you guys, Chad, that you just like you might get? You're saying you have to seek the Masons. Do you have to seek these guys as well a little bit in terms of, is there a sidestep? It's not a progression upwards, but is there a sidestep?
Who was that banker recently that was interviewed about reaching the highest levels of the finance industry worldwide, and him being exposed to the satanic ritual abuse aspect of it? Forget that gentleman's name, but I think that's at the heart of it. I think at the very highest echelons that these are satanic, pedophile, child abusing, child consuming, the vile, demon possessed individuals. And whether you find a larger group of Jews that are part of that, or whatever it is, I mean, that's what I think that's who I think really pulls the strings and runs the world. Or, and it's like anything, follow the money. They run the money because they can orchestrate the wars, they can profit from both sides of everything, they can destroy countries, rape and pillage the resources. I mean, those are the people you never will hear their name. And when that banker came out and gave that testimony, and I mean, you could really see the emotion in him, when he finally gets to this point where he realizes, they're killing children, this is what they're getting off on. That to me is what's at the bottom of the rabbit hole. And whether you're in masonry and you sidestep that direction because you've got some connections that say go into the OTO, or the Golden Dawn. And I know Masons that have that opportunity to go that direction. And I think if you keep on going down that rabbit hole, yeah, you're probably going to find yourself surrounded with a bunch of really disgusting, vile, I don't even want to call them human beings, just creatures. And that's the bottom of the rabbit hole as far as I'm concerned.
Ronald Bernard, is that the name of the banker?
That's it, yes.
Thank you, Candor. They are in chat. We appreciate that. Well, this kind of comes back around to something I was going to ask you, and it's just you've had so many awesome things. I've gotten sidetracked and forgotten the line until we got back here. When you said earlier that kind of some of the things you were seeing kind of got you out of the progression, and then from what I know and what I've seen and have been told by my mom, unfortunately my dad passed before I knew any of this, but he was a 32nd degree in like the early 70s, for sure, without a doubt. She knows that. And that was, before I even knew anything about anything. So later on, I knew he was going to all these meetings all the time. He was always going out, leaving with his hat on. We'd always go to these parades and all that. And it was probably 83, 84. Suddenly, all the comic books I was reading were filled with demons. Throw that out. All the scary horror movies, Alien, things like that, that's demons. Throw that out. And he quit these groups, never wore the hat again, and literally went and built a church. So there's something, apparently, that he saw in the group that led him to have a different view.
And he was the one that was a Shriner?
Yes, he was definitely a Shriner. He was 32nd degree.
Do you know if he was a loyal order of jesters?
I know it was Alibaba on his hat. That's all I know. Like I said, a lot of these questions could possibly get answers from my step family, but we've kind of fallen out since his death, and it's something I'm having trouble with. So
within the way it used to be in your grandfather's day, you had to be a 32nd degree Mason before you could even become a Shriner.
Right.
Currently,
that's what I understand now.
Currently, it's not that way anymore. If you're a Master Mason, right, you can go straight into the Shrine because they need the numbers. But within the Shrine is a very, very elite order, which is the Royal Order of Jesters. And each Shrine has a court, and each court will tap 12 new jesters per year to to come into that court. And it's an invite only. If you ask for it, you will be banned for life of ever becoming one. And so it's this very, very extremely elite, very similar to how elite being a 33rd is. But the difference, when you go get an honorary 33rd, you're still participating in charity work and various things through the Scottish Rite. The Royal Order of Jesters, their motto is mirth is king. And it's all about entertainment, fun, drunken debauchery, and within various
that
courts
sounds
around.
like the groups my dad used to hang out with, without a doubt.
Well,
Sorry, Chad, I was going to say that sounds more a bit like Eyes Wide Shut.
So what happens is, now I know a jester that is a close friend of mine who had the jester hat in his office, and we asked him about it, and he kind of said some stuff without saying some stuff. And about a month ago, I had a conversation with him, and he went into a little bit more detail, and he said, yeah, definitely, they have their fun in that organization. A lot of gambling, prostitution, strippers, and I don't know that this is across the board for every single court, but definitely this is where you get to have the most fun, and it's kept the most secret. And to that point, they had jesters that have been brought up on federal charges. I mean, there's a long list of these guys, corruption within local governments who were connected to these jesters because they had people within the police department. So they were protected by the police. They were shipping in prostitutes. They're running prostitutes across state lines. A lot of them got involved with sex tourism down into Brazil. Just disgusting behavior. And one of the jesters sent a letter out to Blue Lodges all over the country, giving the grand hailing sign of distress that Masons are taught, saying we need to be aware of this. This is what's going on. This is not Masonic behavior. And basically, he had gotten caught up in all of it, and as a result, lost his marriage from the infidelity and all of the like I said, drunken debauchery as a result of that organization. That organization should not have any affiliation with the Scottish Rite or the Shrine. I mean, they really shouldn't. And they've had some really bad dudes as a part of that organization.
Chad, this drunken debauchery, as it's put, is how you watch. I said the film Eyes Wide Shut there, and I think was it Kubrick that did that film, and then is supposedly killed for what he revealed in it. And part of the reading I've done is that it's not consenting adults that are the debauchery. It's actually where we get down to the real scumbag behaviour of swap all the prostitutes in that film for children. Hence, the strange behaviour of Tom Cruise when he returns home and he can't cope with what is basically having a prostitute. Is that where you're saying this gesturing, or like I say, it's a sidestep, it appears to me.
Yeah, I'm going to be very careful with making that accusation. What I can say is for sure what they've been brought up on charges over, and they have there are many of them that were involved in sex tourism down into Brazil with underage prostitutes. The ones that were brought up and went to prison in the U.S. for prostitution and human trafficking, of all the cases that I looked at, I don't believe any of them were with underage prostitutes. They were all, but still, I mean, they're still running prostitution rings and gambling rings at the highest level of the local police and the local government. Somebody brought up Fiona Barnett's story, and I've listened to probably every interview and every video she's put out, and I just can't believe that there are monsters like that in the world that do that to children.
I often wonder what's the controlling power over people that just kill children. I wonder what power is held over people, because I refer back to the film again. I can never understand, I couldn't understand the power you could get from such standard debauchery with consenting adults. There appears to be a much greater power that's held over these people that control the world. And how do you get somebody to press that button? What power do you have over them to make them make those decisions? And it would seem, I'd say it's not evident, but seem
well, you're
the
not a
only way to make.
sociopath, right? So you're trying to reason and rationalize, a sociopath's behavior.
I don't know. Sometimes I think it may be a little deeper or a little more.
And a spiritual level or spiritual element, I agree.
Than just psychopathic or sociopathic. There's always this thing of showing us things in plain sight, and it's usually hidden in some of the sillier places. And just recently on Netflix, a new show launched by Matt Groening, who seems to either have a time machine or access to a future viewer or some kind of crap, because he can really put some stuff in his Simpson cartoon that seems to come to fruition later. Anyway, this show is set in medieval times, fantasy land. There's kings, there's queens, and this princess who's about to get married. And amongst her gifts for her wedding day, she opens this magical cube box that keeps following her around. And inside it is her personal demon that will now be her personal demon for the rest of her life. And she can't get rid of it. It literally jumps into her mouth and tries to go into her. She spits it out. It's now this whole thing in the show where it hangs around. It's her personal demon. I mean, I don't know. Hidden in plain sight, seems to me.
All this being said, Joe, is there a place for Freemasonry or any secret society in our current society? Is this why it's dying? I mean, I'm trying to get to the roots of why it's dying, but it strikes me that people have woken up to this sort of crap now, and as Kennedy said, the idea of a secret society is just abhorrent and disgusting in this day and age. Isn't it time to bury Masons and all these other secret societies and time for a bit of truth?
I would agree with that 100%. And this, in my little way, I'm able to do that with my channel, is just to shine the light on a lot of this subject matter and kind of peel back the various layers of esoteric teachings that we get within Masonry. And I'll have Masons that will criticize me over that and say, look, that's not for the profane. And you hear that a lot, that it's not for the profane. And, to me, I don't think that knowledge should be hidden in only for the adepts. And that's what Masonry wants you to believe, is that, until you become an adept, you're not worthy of, really understanding, and getting these lessons. And I think that, the world as a whole, there's such a need right now and a desire for the truth and for, understanding the world around us and understanding these things and seeing the spiritual element in warfare that's taking place, that, things that are being done behind closed doors, we need to open those doors. We need to shine the light on it. It needs to be exposed for the good and for the bad, and let people make up their own mind. And in today's day and age, with the amount of information at our fingertips, you've got the Library of Alexandria in your palm of your hand, now, and to be able to do that research, I think it takes a lot of the mystery out of Masonry, because people can really find out these things. I mean, you can find out the degrees and exactly what's said and what's done, and it takes all the mystery out of it. And that's where the recruitment for the younger generation is dying off. And as these older Masons pass away, the numbers aren't being replenished. For these older Masons, I don't think it really was about the esoteric knowledge. It was more just a social outlet, and that's how they've always looked at it. And the newer Masons have a different take. They have a different desire, and I just don't think Masonry is really fulfilling it.
Unfortunately, I think we started off with the Library of Alexandria in our back pocket. Unfortunately, I think now Google has its hands on the matchbox to burn it, and is doing a great job about it. On that note, you said you had an hour and a half. I see we're coming up for an hour and a half, so I don't know if you've got to shoot off, or I'm just giving you an out if you do need one.
I appreciate that, because yes, I am at as much time as I can give this evening, gentlemen. I absolutely appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk with you all, and hope this isn't the last time.
It's been
Not
brilliant.
at all, sir. You will be here anytime you have time. You are now family. You should know that. So, yes.
Yeah,
Welcome back
your
anytime,
time.
Chad. Thank you.
Appreciate the information. It's been refreshing, to be honest.
I'll echo that, John. And yeah, Chad, it's been a pleasure, brother. And like I say, I've listened to plenty. It's been great to have a chat with you, mate. And thanks for sharing what you have shared with us. It's appreciated.
It's definitely my pleasure, and I will absolutely look forward to coming back on. There's so much more we could talk about. I mean, the list that I put together,
The list is amazing, man.
You could
Oh my
almost
God,
spend a whole show just on each one and still just scratch the surface. So, yeah, there's quite a bit that time is not going to permit me to even touch upon, but we can do it again next time.
Yes, please. And we do appreciate every second that you did give us. So thanks for coming on, and we will definitely get into that list. If you guys want to check out the show description, I went ahead and threw that list in there just as maybe a little bit of directive, if only for me. But yeah, there's a list right there in the show description of everything that some things we did touch on and some things we're going to touch on next time. So everybody take note. So Chad, thank you so much for coming on. Why don't you remind everybody real quick where they can find you, the name of your YouTube channel, all that good stuff before you skin on out of here.
Yeah, definitely. If you want to check out my other videos where I really get into these topics, I do some presentation videos that are PowerPoint and that are pretty lengthy, but I think they're worth the time if somebody's going to take and watch them. But over at Chad Swan's on YouTube. And since YouTube gave me community strike last week and took down one of my videos, I am now also on BitChute under the same name. So in case for some reason I get pulled off YouTube in the future, I will be on BitChute posting the same content. So that's where you can find me. And if anybody wants to email me directly that maybe want to have a conversation in a more private setting, my email is chadswans1177@gmail.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Chad.
Thank you, gentlemen. I'll see you next time.
Thank you, Chad.
Awesome.
Yes,
Thanks.
sir.
Have a great night.
Thank you very much, Chad. Yep. Take care.
Well, that was amazing.
That was amazing.
And
Can I
again,
say
it was one of those things almost like when Crow was here. I was so just enraptured with listening to the information. I would lose so many questions, have to write them down and come back to them later.
Yep, I was lucky to get any in that I did. It's
I'll
a
tell
little bit.
you what, Josh. Sorry.
Yeah, no,
there's a key to. I've been making notes because as we was going through stuff, and as you just taught me about 3.5 minutes ago, just scroll down sometimes. And go, what a lovely list you've got of all the things we were going to discuss. I didn't even notice there because I missed pre-show this week. So yeah, scroll down, lad. Scroll down. That's my lesson for this evening. Sorry, Josh.
Nope. I will do a little mea culpa there too. You asked on multiple occasions what we had going on for tonight, and I said we had Chad coming on, and that was about the extent of what I had, knowing that we had this list out there. But I just thought maybe, I don't know. There we go.
I think it's hilarious that we almost didn't touch on any of that list. As true IRM style, we just babbled on and babbled on and
But it was good babbling.
Tower of Babel. Yeah, no, really good. I'm up for a break if you guys are.
Absolutely. I think I even have it pulled up and ready. I might just need to reset it and check my settings because
I don't
nothing
believe you.
pisses me off more than watching that damn thing buffer when all I want it to play. Let me just get rid of Chad's name there now that he's gone. I'm going to pull Adam down. There we go. We'll throw Adam in the mix. Sorry, don't mind me. I'm just doing a little bit of live production here. So I make sure everybody's labeled.
Well, like I said, I do think that was quite refreshing. I don't know much about Chad. I've listened to a few of his podcasts and stuff. I wasn't sure where he was coming from, where his angle was, what his motivations were, or any of those things. But after some of the questions I asked him and some of the answers, I was quite encouraged by what he was putting across there. Not your average Mason, put it that way.
Nope, that's for sure. Let's see. Bam. Look at me go. Oh, what did I say? I was going to reset all this stuff.
You jinxed yourself.
I did jinx myself. I got so caught up making labels and stuff.
I've got to be honest, Josh. I'm looking forward to being back next week. I'm doing a couple of pretty pictures. So if you'll let me take over next week.
Well,
I've missed it.
Did you see that OBS has a new update? I know John says don't fix it if it ain't broken, but damn, we can sure make it streamlined. Some of the new updates they have for OBS are going to make my life so much easier.
I didn't.
Sounds like I need a midweek lesson.
Well, we'll learn together because I've not even seen it. I've not even updated yet. I just saw this morning that there was the new update out, and I just decided that I ought not update before the show.
That's more what I was getting at, but I wouldn't say by any stretch that it's not broken. Almost everything we touch is broken, so yeah, we shall see. But always have a plan on being able to revert back to what semi worked. I'm just struggling with my volume here. This bastard just keeps creeping up and creeping up. It's got a mind of its own.
Somewhere. Oh, no, I think that's a Windows. Never mind. I keep having that thought. That's about the fourth time I've almost said that out loud. But I keep forgetting you're not a Windows fella.
There you go. Oh, no, this is Windows.
Is it? Well, then somewhere in your Windows audio settings, a little right-click down there on your speaker, on your toolbar down there somewhere, there's going to be a setting somewhere that you should be able to uncheck it. And I suspect it's got it checked, allowing applications to take exclusive control. And I'm guessing that's what it's doing, that's why it keeps creeping up or doing something's not registering of proper communications.
That's it. I remember I had it before, but it's been revoked. So yeah. Anyway, I'll look for that in the break. Cheers.
Sweet. All right, everybody. Well, that's been at least the first part of Iron Realm Media's Flat Earth Friday Fringecast. We'll be right back. Hopefully, we'll maybe open up the flat line. We'll just make it kind of a fan. So yeah, stay tuned. Who knows what the hell we got in store for you. Here's a little bit of gravity. In the meantime, we'll be right back.